Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Swimmingly Show. Today we are talking about something that maybe doesn't get enough attention in the sport. We call it the middle layer, but it might be the most important piece in the success of any aquatics program.
Yep. And that is development meets. We're not talking about championship meets, not travel meets, not meets designed to impress anyone. We're literally going to get down to the grassroots level of the sport, talk about the meets for beginners, the new swimmers coming into the sport, and kids that are learning how to race. So let's hone in on that today.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you get this part wrong, everything that comes after gets even harder. We talk about Hayes in running a successful aquatics program, whether it's a parks and rec facility, country club, year round, coach owned, board run. You got to have the three tiers. You got to learn to swim at the bottom, at the base, and you've got to have your traditional team with the stalwarts at the top. And in the middle, you have your development program, and it's the unsung, overlooked lack of systems part of the sport. And like you're saying, if development goes wrong, that middle layer, everything after developing that great swim team at the top just gets harder.
Exactly. And honestly, right now, development meets aren't even being run. And if
No.
they are being run, they're not being run in a way that's fun and enjoyable for these kids. So let's dive right into it. And first, let's zoom out for a second and talk about swimming. Swimming in general has a retention problem. I mean, it's got a growth problem. We've talked about this in our in our other shows, but it's got a retention problem. Kids are leaving the sport earlier than ever right now. And most of the time, it's not because they hate swimming. That's not really the reason. It's because their first competitive experience at a swim meet is overwhelming for the swimmer and maybe more importantly, overwhelming for their parents. And so they're confusing. And for a lot of these kids, they're more stressful than even starting to begin with fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're not talking about your 3-day swim meet with 2 overnights. We're talking about developmental swim team, and that layer right there is the first impression of competitive swimming. So it's where kids learn what racing feels like. It's where parents learn what it's like too. It's how real meet works, in a small setting at your venue, at your practice site is the kind of thing we're talking about here, where families have this introductory look, this viewport, this sneak peek into whether or not they think the sport is right for them and their kids. And it's our chance to the first impressions are everything, right?
Yeah, and I think the mistake that a lot of teams keep making or start making is that they're trying to run these development meets like a smaller or dummied down version of what a high level meet is. Like they're trying to push in the same structure, they're trying to make them long, and there's a lot of the same pressure because of the setup of the meet, the volunteers they need for the meet. All of that stuff is just a smaller version for these what they call development meets today. It's just with younger kids that are new to the sport. So we got to change something.
Yeah, and it's a sign of an industry that's maturing, because a small development swim meet should not be a small version of a big swim meet. That's false thinking. It doesn't make sense. You would never teach someone, to drive by putting them on the highway at rush hour. You're not going to say, and here's how you're supposed to drive, and now we're on I-40 trying to drive across the state or the country. We're going to
Yeah.
start on the side streets, and we're gonna start in a neighborhood, and before that,
Or how about
we're
this?
gonna
Maybe a
start
golf cart.
yeah, well, that's a good idea. We'll start in a parking lot. A parking lot, if you're learning to drive and you're 15 years old, a parking lot is not a small version of I-40, right? A parking lot is a parking lot, and it's the same thing here with development meets that they're not a small version of a big meet. They're a different, uh product that serves a different purpose for a different level of the sport.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. I mean, these development meets are not about finding the absolute fastest swimmers in the bunch. They're more about getting these kids exposure to what a swim meet is, building their confidence, getting them comfortable on the pool deck. Could be in their, it could just be in the pool that they practice in. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to travel anywhere, but you've got to build their confidence and their comfort.
Yeah.
These meets should be about helping kids feel successful and then generate more curiosity about what racing can actually be like.
Yeah, yeah, and it's okay to, I think, challenge coaches and people running programs out there to think of this in a very business type setting, and the really the metric, what I'm hearing you say is, we gotta get the kids to do the activity, to do swimming, and continue to do swimming, and those metrics at this development level should be very simple. It's centered around exposure to learning the skills and to playing the skills, competing the skills, racing the skills. So if they're not racing early, and they don't stick around long enough to go to the very top of the sport, they never really see the sport for what it is.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about why these meets are broken today, why they might feel broken, even why they don't exist. So here's what we're seeing a lot with a lot of the year round teams, let's say the ones that want to start a development program or the ones that have one. First,
Mhm.
their development meets to kick off are too long in general. These kids swim once and then they sit around forever. Parents are there for hours. Their attention spans go, they're gone. They don't know what's going on. And then next thing you know, they got a race 2 hours later and they watch their kids swim for 2 minutes out of a 4 hour meet. Okay. So that's one. Second, they're too complicated. So when we talk about the development meets today, the dummied down version that they're running, they're still trying to run them like a big meet. So you still have the heat sheets. You've still got multiple heats. You've got these teams trying to introduce disqualifications without explanation to these kids. Parents do not know what is happening, and kids do not know what is next. So they're literally, like I've said, they've taken a big meet, this idea of a big meet that they're used to, and they're trying to cram it into this development meet, which is not the way. And then third, they still feel high pressure, right? Like kids are getting DQ'd. They don't understand why. Results come out late. There's no immediate feedback. So there's just a lot of pressure around these meets that should be fun at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. We have a family birthday party next Friday, and one of the moms in our family, one of her kids is has a swim meet on Friday night, and so we're like, okay, well, what time is the meet going to be over? And she said, well, I don't know, but it starts at 5 o'clock. And I think we might be done at 6:15 because she's in the early events and so forth, and but the bottom line is they don't know what time the meet ends, and so and this is a family member who, coached, a top 5 NCAA collegiate swim team. Like, she knows swimming. Like, she's not a beginner. She doesn't have a green thumb in swimming, and even she is going to this age group swim meet. It's not at their typical venue, and she's like, "Well, we gotta calculate, it's 30 minutes outside of town, and it starts at 5, but I don't really know." And that's just a good example of the where that development sweet spot would come into play for us in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, and these types of meets, the ones that are being run today, it's where you start hearing things like, I don't think my kid likes meets. And oh, by the way, that might be the parent saying they don't like meets. When the reality is the meet experience is not built for true beginners that are coming from Learn to Swim or summer programs. It's just not.
Yeah. Let me, say this in a controversial way. It's a swim meet has started to become a four-letter word, and what I mean by that is, if you're taking an 8-year-old and you're expecting them to go to a swim meet traditionally that's been set up for somebody that's 16 or 18 years old, they're going to have a bad experience. The way that the logistics of the meet, they're going to have a bad experience. They're going to have a poor experience. Their family members are going to have a poor experience. So you got to take, just because there's something that works for the sectional level swimmer that's 17 years old over here, doesn't mean that you can apply it for an 8-year old over here. It needs to be a different product entirely. Otherwise, these families are going to walk away thinking that a swim meet is a cuss word, and it really should be the opposite. We always say it should be a program's greatest asset, not its greatest liability. And in order for that at the core to be true, it's got to make kids want to come back and race again.
Yeah. Amen to that. And I think let's talk about one of like the foundation points of these development programs. So let's kind of shift to connecting the importance of practice to what these meets should be like. And we talk about this all the time, Charlie. We can go on for days. So we think and we believe that this is the missing link for a lot of these programs and where it really should start to click. So most development swimmers, let's say they're practicing 2 to 3 times a week. Would you agree to that, Charlie? Okay. And honestly, that is where they should be. So they should be just practicing 2 to 3 days a week, nothing too crazy. At that stage, it's not about adding more practices, it's about being more intentional with the ones you already have. And what we mean by that is if you have 2 to 3 sessions in a week, one or two of those should be centered around a very specific skill. Let me repeat that again. One or two of those practices should be focused around a very specific skill, not everything at once. We're not throwing in IM sets. We're not throwing in dives. We're not throwing in turns all in one practice. It needs to be one clear focus. So it might look like streamlines that practice. It might look like side breathing for your freestyle that practice. Something simple and repeatable that the swimmers can actually understand and feel each practice. So when we connect these types of practices to the meet is considered the play portion, right? Swim meet can be a scary word for a lot of parents because of what they're used to. So it could just be a play session where they are connecting the skill that they worked on that week to that meet. And so that event should not feel random or pulled from a generic event template or event order that you guys are using at a big meet. They should be designed to reward the swimmer for the work that they did that week. Short
Bingo.
races, short event orders, and events where the skill clearly shows up.
You're
So
talking about short weekly feedback loop where the athlete learns, the athlete competes, the athlete gets the feedback and is excited and incentivized to do it the next week.
yes, I mean, that's exactly right. And nobody is really doing that or having that put in place. We have teams that are doing it. Their swimmer counts are increasing. The kids are staying in the sport. They're having more fun. And they're at the end of the day, they're asking if they did the skill correctly at these meets or these play sessions, right? It's not, hey, did I go a best time? It's coach, did I do that correctly? And that's how it should be at that age, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think, the racing starts to make sense to the kids if they can apply it to those things that they're learning each week, and there's this immediate feedback loop, this immediate association with what they're learning, and I think another important thing to we want people to be able to sink their teeth into practical things to apply here, and I think too often people are afraid to prescribe things and they describe things, so I'm gonna prescribe a few things. When we say developmental, we mean, that's based on ability first and foremost, but largely that age group falls between 6 and 12 years old. So that's who we're talking about. We're talking about this would be, certainly A-level swimmers and below type. So that's a developmental swimmer for the sake of this conversation. 4 sessions a week for a developmental swimmer is too many. In my opinion, I would prescribe 3 times a week is too many for a developmental swimmer. I think 1 or 2 is the sweet spot, and more importantly, to understand the cadence and the feedback loop, like Hayes is saying, the ratio should always be 1 to 1 of a practice session and a play session. So if you're only doing 1 session a week, you should have 1 week where you're practicing, you should have 1 week where you're playing. If you have 2 sessions a week, great. You should have one of the practices offered each week be the practice session, one of them be that play session. And so whichever way you slice it, you can modify that. You can have, lots of different practice slots and they go to one of the practice slots. A lot of ways that we see this in our curriculum being implemented, but the bottom line is like Hayes is saying, you have the practice session, you have the play session, and that's a weekly cadence so these swimmers can feel that racing start to make sense because they're applying it to what they're learning every week.
Yeah, I mean, the connection, they're really starting to see the connection between the practice and the competition, right? And
Mhm.
then racing starts to become part of learning rather than this stressful thing that they have to prepare for, which is so important at these young ages for these kids that are coming from learn to swim. you have to remember that these kids don't know what a swim meet is. So
Right.
you have to tie in and connect what they know, which is going to the pool and practicing, and then slowly implementing this meet and play session, which becomes a meet, and they start learning what a meet is, and it becomes fun. It's low pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, and from a coaching standpoint, a lot of times you have part-time staff that works your development group, or you don't have a development group because you don't have somebody to fill that role, or you as the head coach are coaching the sectional level kids and up, and you're trying to fill that position. This gives you a clear, repeatable curriculum and cadence for those people. You're not just teaching the summers in the water, you're teaching the development coach that's on deck. They're creating the connections in their mind with what they're teaching in what you have in your plan and your prescription with what they're seeing in the races. And because they're doing both things every 7 days, we've closed that feedback loop, or you have. So you're not just teaching your swimmers, you're teaching and you're developing the coaches on staff as well.
Yeah, so let's take connecting practice and the meet, which is super important, and let's dive in a little bit more to what these development meets should actually be doing. So we
Yeah.
just we just talked about connecting practice and meets, and the purpose of that is become really clear for these swimmers. So
Yeah.
Charlie, why don't you just dive into that a little bit more and talk to them about what these meets should actually do?
Yeah, first, kids need repetition, and racing is a skill. And learning to apply what they've learned in practice in a competition setting, in a race environment, is the skill unto itself. In fact, it's the ultimate skill. And so people often understand the fact that kids need repetition, but the connection to the repetition in a racing environment is not always there. So in this format, the more often that kids race, the faster that they learn. And they're also loving it and they're having fun. But we're laying that foundation for however far they go in the sport from that early development time. And second, they need the immediacy. So we definitely touched on this here. And kids have to see the results. The delayed gratification that the elite swimmers are really good at. And I think there's, some of the best mindsets in the world, that delayed gratification mindset. That's developed by stalwarts in the sport that have an unbelievable amount of dedication, that are committed to their craft. Expecting a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or even a 12 or 13-year-old that's still dipping their toe in the water, so to speak, pun intended, to have a 12-week feedback cycle, delayed gratification mindset is not the way forward for the sport. That feedback loop every 7 days is what matters at the young ages to establish the base. And then, lastly, to be clear is to be kind. There has got to be clarity, and kids and parents should always know what is happening and what's coming next. And when you give people that are new to the sport expectations that are 1 week long, and then the cycle starts over and progresses on itself, that's clarity that people that are new to the sport deserve and need.
Yeah, and remember, these a lot of these parents are coming from other sports with their young kids.
Mhm.
Take, for example, soccer or basketball, where they get to these scrimmages or they get to these games that are an hour long. They've got the scoreboard in their face. They know what to expect. And so you just have to remember that we've got to start tying it closer to those types of things, because at the end of the day, it's got to be fun for these kids, I
Right,
think.
right. Development, yeah. They development meets, swim meets need to feel closer to, say, a scrimmage than a championship tournament. We have lots of different language in our sport. We call swim meet a meet instead of a game, and we go to a meet or compete in a meet instead of play the game, right? But I think the more we can tie those analogies together, it helps those average families understand that, and coaches too, that a development meet, this middle layer that we're talking about in our sport, it's got to feel more like a scrimmage. It's in-house, it's quick, it's brief, it's still a competition, it's still important, but not every swim meet has to feel like a multi-day tournament or championship.
Yeah, nailed it. I mean, how do you think? So going from what they should do, what should these meets do, to how they should be structured?
Yeah.
So Charlie, let's. I want you to. We've got a ton of examples in our curriculum, obviously, but why don't you go ahead and give us the exact structure of a week or two, so everyone kind of understands what we're talking about here?
Yep. Event lists, event orders that are 1 digit long, that are fewer than 10 events. Let's start there. Ever been to a meet where there's less than 10 events? Probably not. Here we go. Welcome to 2026. Start call one lap and two lap races.
There
Well,
you go.
Charlie, that doesn't sound sophisticated. We call those 20s and 50s. Well, that's true. And I know that. The average person, the average parent does not. So we still call them 25s. But when you look at the pool and you're a new swimmer or parent, one lap across the pool, that should be a race. If we're jumping to 200-yard races right out of the gate, we're probably not doing it right. So 25s and 50s, lots of one lapper and two lapper races. Just keeping it simple. You can have a full feeling swim competition meet and just do freestyle. You do not have to offer all four strokes and all the relays and IM and everything under the sun in order to make it feel like a quote unquote real swim meet.
That
If
might
you
be
have a group,
mind-boggling to a lot of people.
yeah, and it shouldn't be, but you can have a single, age group. Let's say you have your 6 to your 8-year-olds. I know it's 7 and 8, but I'm making a point. You have your 6 to your 8-year-olds, and you just offer the one lapper freestyle and the two lapper freestyle, the 25 free and the 50 free. You have that. That's a full 45-minute swim meet right there in house and just keeping it simple. Relays can be, of course, part of it, but relays can just be a separate meet. Today, we're focusing on relays. Why is that important? The team camaraderie, learning takeoffs, learning how to cheer and support and stay behind the blocks after during your races with your teammates. So if you can zero in and make each of these super fun, there's just really a whole lot more opportunity there to increase the value of the product of what we call a swim meet, as opposed to just making it a 65 event format and throwing every stroke and every relay and every single thing against the wall for every age group. And parents walk out of there after 8 hours completely annihilated and exhausted and definitely never going.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing and what we've done in this curriculum, which we're super excited about, we'll kind of walk you through what a week looks like. Let's use let's make it simple, Charlie, and let's say 2 sessions per week, one practice, one play session, one meet. You can keep calling it a meet, no problem. So
Mhm.
let's say Tuesday afternoon, you've got your development kids coming in. This practice session should be hyper focused on one thing. And in that hyper focus on one thing, you should have drills around what the focus or theme of that practice is. And then you should have a very short little main set for these kids. So keep structuring the practice session how a regular practice should look, but
That's
just
right.
make it simple for these kids. Okay. So you've got to focus a theme, you've got your drills, and then you're going right into a little main set where you focus on those drills or that focus for the week. And then fast forward to Friday, you can call it your Friday Night Lights session. Let's make it a meet. You are going to have a couple events for exactly what you practiced that week.
There you go. Amazing, right? I mean, think about it this so Hayes just outlined the concept that everyone in the sport would nod their head along to and understand. Like, we're going to do a progression of X stroke with X drills this week. And it's going to start with the core, and then we're going to do some kicking. We're going to apply it to some drills there with kicking. Then we're going to do a preset, and we're going to work on something with the catch or maybe the arms. And we're going to do a main set, at this level for, say, 15 or 20 minutes. These are not elite athletes, but let's say 15 or 20 minutes, and we build in a main set, and that's great. And everyone's nodding along, being like, oh, yeah, I'm an expert at that. And you probably are. But then why do we not follow that logically through to conclusion and we have the racing element? And I don't mean a test set, and I don't mean trying to get them to swim fast when they're dog tired at the end of practice. This is development swimming. I mean, if we've taught them the core concepts, I mean, the physical, their core of their body, the kicking concepts, the catching, and we've done a little bit of skill development in the main set, then for the next session, they need to learn to stand up on the blocks and apply it in a racing environment. And spoiler alert, that's the fun part. Everyone is doing all of the things except the last part, the fun part, and the idea that we're introducing this as revolutionary, I mean, it really shouldn't be. So you can spend Tuesday doing all the things you normally would, like Hayes said, and then Saturday morning, the play session, they're applying it and they're totally connected. It's not some, oh, we're just going to randomly go off the blocks and do, relays. That's not it at all. It's here's what we learned this week, and now we're going to stand on the blocks in a racing environment and learn to apply it. It's just logically following through what you've been doing all week through to conclusion.
Yeah. And just a reminder, this is connecting. The important piece here is connecting practice with the meet and the importance of that. We want them to have a learning experience from practice to the meet rather than a stressful one. So when you run these meets, another really important piece is how rules are handled or how disqualifications are handled. Throw that away. Throw the disqualifications away. We're not judging kids on the legality of their strokes right now. You're literally focused on what they learned that week and make sure they're doing it correctly and rewarding them for it. And that is what will help them have a fun time running these meets.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And the way that you're doing it correctly, if we were prescribing this curriculum to you, it's that a development swimmer, as we have defined it in this discussion, should never have to go anywhere other than your facility for your sessions on the time that they pay for. And they should be able to feel like they got an entire swim meet and racing environment. So it's not where we're going to practice, but you're not really on the team unless you go travel and do the meet for 2 days. And yeah, you're sort of committed, but you're not going to as many meets as you should. That is the responsibility of coaches in making their development program what it should be. Within your program, week by week, day to day, you need during your time at your facility or the facility you're leasing space from, you need to provide the practice and you need to provide the competition. And that needs to feel like it's the full sport experience for a 6 year old or for an 8 year old.
Yeah. And so, Charlie, why don't you tell us why programs are struggling to do this? Why most year round programs or teams with development programs are struggling to do this today?
All right. Well, because you asked, I'm going to tell them. The reality is, most coaches, and hang with me, they already believe everything we're talking about. Probably nodding along, oh, well, yeah, I know all of this, but they want development meets, they want better development meets, or they want them in the first place. And the problem is logistics and just not having a system to know how to do it.
Yeah. And like the traditional meet operations make short, frequent meets really, really hard. And we're talking about what you're used to at these big championship meets or these big invite meets, right? Look over the right of the pool. You've got your table set up with your consoles and your referees and your starter systems and multiple timers per lane, all of that stuff. Way too much setup, way too many volunteers,
Right.
and way too much manual work. So all of this is frightening these teams or these assistant coaches to even think about what a correct development meet should be like.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It goes back to that swim meet phrase being a 4 letter word, and it shouldn't be, and it's not. We're not talking about there's a giant hospitality room. We're not talking about the officials. We call them the blue shorts brigade, marching or parading themselves around the pool deck. We're talking about you at your facility during your practice time running the sport of swimming, not the practice of swimming, but the sport of swimming. And the current system just doesn't support how developmental swimmers need to actually race. We are we are relieving the sport of the burden of what it means to run a swim meet for the majority, that middle layer of all of those development swimmers.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge is getting these coaches or teams to think differently. I think we're just so stuck in the mud
Hmm.
here that it's hard for a coach who's been at a program forever to even start to think differently or even pass that on to an assistant coach and say, "Hey, Charlie, why don't you take this off my plate? I think you can come up with some cool ideas." I don't know if that's happening today. I hope, but I know that the sport needs to start thinking differently in order to make these types of meets possible.
Yeah, and right, and it's like we said, it's not the thinking or the creativity that we're lacking here. There's a lot. I mean, this podcast's included in all of them. The people are saying all of the right things and they're raging against the machine and they're all the right ways and oh, this needs to be better. We need to change this and rah, rah, rah. It's because there's not a system to do it. All of the pontification is fun, at lunch with your friends that care about the sport, but it's simply about having a system to implement. And I think for some reason, and this is our pontification, for some reason, our sport is behind the times in implementing the system. And you got to be okay with saying, here's the prescription. We're going to do this system, this particular plan, swimmingly included. We're not afraid to say, here's our curriculum product, and here's how you should implement it. You should do it this particular way, because it's not like we don't have intelligent, awesome, creative, passionate people in the sport. It's that we spend so much time, I think, with our head in the clouds, talking about what could be or what ought to be, instead of making that true, putting it into practice and saying, dadgummit, like we're going to do this for the next 6 weeks and commit to this plan. And we're going to see what the result is. And if we need to improve it or modify it, then we can go from there. But everyone has the power to do this on their pool deck. With all the excuses in the world of why you can't run a swim meet, we've heard them, but you're thinking about the traditional 4-day hospitality room, blue shorts brigade swim meet. And we're talking about when you tell us, and we've heard it 1,000 times, well, we can't run a meet at our facility because it's only a 22-yard pool or it's an odd length pool. You say, you know what? That's even better for development swimmers because first, they don't even know that 25 yards is the official distance or 25 meters. And they don't care. Call it a one lapper. It is an advantage. It's an asset, not a liability. Make the meet short. Those same kids, they don't know that normal meets are this length and duration or this many events. And in fact, they don't want to know that. Make it
Yeah.
short, make it 4 events, make it sweet. All the volunteers, all that stuff is just gone to the side. You are in control, coaches and people, parks and rec, country clubs, people running their sessions, their aquatics programming. You can create the event, the swim meet during that practice time, and you're not beholden to anyone. There's no, of course, with swimmingly, there's no hardware or paper or anything like that, but you should run a meet and a family should get what they consider to be the full sport experience, i.e., racing competition, in under an hour.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly why these programs struggle to do this. They are taking what they know of a swim meet, this very complex meet, and they are
Hmm.
trying to make it a miniature version of that. And that thought process needs to be thrown away.
Right, right. Yeah, it's
Think
like trying to
differently.
divide. It's like trying to divide by zero. Like it doesn't work. Like parents need to know when their kid swims and see their times immediately and have a scoreboard in their pocket and feel the whole experience. And that shouldn't put a burden on you guys running stuff to have this marathon event that requires an army of volunteers or staff members. It should just be a part of your normal value proposition, your normal product offering.
Yeah. So let's take that idea of what a meet is, this complex big time swim meet, this miniature version of it for these development swimmers. And let's talk about how swimmingly might be able
Mhm.
to be plugged in to make it easier for them and help them think differently on the pool deck when it comes to these grassroots level swimmers.
All right. Yeah, let's do it. Hit me.
All right, so this is where swimmingly comes in. And we don't want to sit here and give this crazy sales pitch, but we want it to be an enabler for the coaches, especially for the head coaches. Hey, head coach, pass this off to your assistant coach. Swimmingly was built exactly for this, to make your development meets easy to run, short meets, small pools, minimal volunteers, no hardware, no paper, and you can run a meet in under an hour very easily with a few devices in your pocket and literally no setup time.
Yeah. Yeah. Irritatingly simple is what I
Yeah.
like to say. There's got to be something's wrong here because I'm not stressed out and feeling like I just survived the last 8 hours of my life. Hayes, this is irritatingly simple to do. What's up with that?
Yeah. I mean this will change everything for these groups and especially for these younger coaches or your assistant coaches. because these teams can now start to think about running weekly meets.
Mhm.
Coaches can now focus on teaching, and kids can get more racing reps in without the chaos of this complex system that's in place today.
Yeah, yeah. It's you know, when those meets get easier to run, operate, kids get better faster and they fall in love with the sport because when they're easy to run, you can do them more often and you can do them faster. I mean, it's just a simple basic formula here.
Yeah, and this is where it really matters. I mean, when development meets are done well and
Mhm.
they're done with the right intentions, connecting practice with the meet, the retention will go up. The confidence of these swimmers will go up and parents will stay invested. They can easily get behind a short swim meet with a couple events where they watch their kid swim a one lapper, get out of the pool, run around, get their little piece of candy, look up and say, "Hey, mom, thumbs up. Let's get right behind the block again and let's do one more race." They
Yeah.
can get behind that, I assure you.
We know that because we see it every week with
Exactly.
the teams that are doing it because the
Yes.
coach tells us and we get emails from parents about this, that it's just the system that they've been provided now is finally connecting the dots for many of the things coaches have always done well all along, in the water with the technique and the instruction. And they just have a system to connect practice and play and the achievements behind it and the curriculum that we're giving them and put everything together so that most importantly, kids start to love racing. That's the part they love, and that's the part that gets them coming back. And that alone is how the base of the sport will grow and how we'll grow the sport overall. If kids don't love racing at 6 and 8 years old, the sport will not grow. We have got to have a proportionately outsized focus as an industry on getting kids to love racing at 6 and 8 and 10 years old. And by that, I mean percentage wise from your time and your resources as an aquatics organization, it needs to be spent on helping kids fall in love with racing, with the sport of swimming, racing, getting on the blocks. That's how you're going to build 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds who don't fall off. 75% do at 13, but still want to keep swimming. And there's your USA Swimming. There's your curve on how to grow membership. That's it. That's the
Yeah,
whole
I mean,
thing.
yeah, I mean, we've obviously talked about these experiences because we have teams that are implementing this curriculum and it's incredible. But just sharing one of my experiences a few weeks ago being at Lifetime Fitness in Arizona.
Hmm.
I went to one of their meets. It was one of their, holiday classics or something like that. And I walk in, the parents were lining the entire side of the pool. They had their chairs there. They were right next to the pool. It was really cool. I walk up to the aquatics director and the coaches. They've got the devices there. This is 10 minutes before the meet starts. They huddle their devices. They go off. The timers go behind their lanes, and they get the swimmers behind the blocks, and they are racing in 10 minutes, right? And they have a table over in the side. I thought this was amazing. They had a table over on the side with a bucket of candy and a bucket of like really cheap toys, rubber duckies, whatever. So when these kids swim a race, they know where to go. They're going to zip around. They're going to go to that table with the candy and the toys. They're going to grab one and they are going to smile and they're going to immediately think, "Wow, that was a lot of fun. I get this little reward. I'm ready to do it again."
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They got right behind the blocks again and in 5 minutes they were doing their next race. I mean, it's truly incredible. And remember guys, these aren't swimmers that are training 4 hours a day that get beat down after a race. These kids have energy for days. They can, they can go. And so when they swim these races, they're going to have fun. It's two or
Yeah.
three races, they're out of there.
I mean, what Hayes you're talking about, this is not theory anymore. This is actually happening. You flew across, 3 time zones to go. You're at this particular meet because you were there with your family, so you stopped by. This isn't theory anymore. These people are doing this and they're doing it in the right way.
Yeah. So we can obviously talk about this for days. We're going to wrap it up. So guys, if you're a coach, if you're a team admin, if you're an aquatics director, a league leader, anything, take a hard look at what these development meets should and could be.
That's right.
And are they actually serving the beginners, the learn to swim swimmers, or are they just copies of this ridiculous format that we're doing at the high level?
Hey, newsflash, everyone. The growth and future of the sport of swimming is not built on arguing around what site is going to have the future's swim meet. It's built around having development meets at your site every single week. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah, nailed it. And if you're ready to rethink this, if you're ready to get development meets running in the right direction, we obviously want to help. We want to help you guys run a simple meet. I mean, you guys can come to us and we will set you guys up with a curriculum that will get you guys started. You guys can run a sample meet with the devices that you have on your desk or in your pockets today. You can really see how simple it can make your meets for these kids. And we'll get you guys started in about 2 days.
Bing bong boom. I love it. You got the last word, Hayes. I love it. How do you think we're going to move forward after this episode? What do we got next for them?
I don't know. I want to keep talking about how we're going to keep growing our sport and increasing retention for all of these teams. So maybe we just double down and keep talking about development meets and how they should be run. I don't know.
I think some of the most successful companies have had the same message for decades and beat the same drum every day. So I think if you guys want to hear us say the same thing to you next time, we'll be right here. So until then, keep it going swimmingly. All right, nice.